today I wanted to do a webinar basically to foster a sense of community within our group. It's so important that we feel seen, that we feel heard, and that we know that we're surrounded by people who are doing the type of introspective work that we do, because it's not easy work to do. Yesterday, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing one of the last members of the 12-week breakthrough coaching program, and it was a beautiful meeting. And we discussed how the 12-week breakthrough coaching program, how it opened up her mind and how it was able to help her understand herself better and see how abandonment wounds were really almost like they created a lens in which she saw abandonment in many different situations, and how the class allowed her to be more objective about the intensity of her feelings. And it taught her how to ponder, question whether or not these people really were responsible. Could we give them all the credit for this deep wound? And it was a beautiful interaction. And I always walk away feeling like these are such important conversations, where the members of our group who are doing this really hard work, and if you're doing this work, more than likely, if you're doing it at the intensity of someone like myself, like this is a 24-hour job. Like, that the default setting of the brain is like a vacuum, and it's willing to suck you in. It's so strong. It's the paradigms and the programs are what has carved civilizations throughout history. And we in this moment are the ones who are rewriting history, or actually not rewriting history, but changing the course of our future. And to do that, right, it's quantum mechanics. For me to overcome a prior force and carve something new, then the force that I am today has to be greater than the force of yesterday. So if I have a fear running, and if you take a cosmic perspective, what really hurts human civilization? It's fear. It's fear. In one form or another, it's fear. Fear is the opposite of love, which is, I don't have to change anything. I can be unconditionally loving. I can love you, maybe even be irritated by you, but I'm not going to try to change you, because I'm not judging this idiosyncrasy. It just is. I see the essence in you. I can hold space for the essence of the being that you are. That takes a lot of spiritual practice, a lot of spiritual work, because my ego consciousness, which is tied to the past and tied to the constructs, Buddhists call them the aggregates of the mind, that which becomes the mind and forms the mind, that can be really hard to master, because we can become in pain, so egocentric, all we see and feel is our pain, and we experience that subjectively, and then we show up in the world with this pain, and we're trying to avoid the pain. That's what ego wants to do. Ego wants to avoid the pain, push it away, or blame someone for the pain, anything but to be sucked into the vacuum of that pain. And yet Rumi tells us that the only way out is through. So those of us who are doing this work, we are deliberately stilling our awareness, developing a stabilized awareness, and looking within. And we also have to understand, just from a neurological standpoint, that when you start to do this work, well, I use a train as an analogy, you're stopping a speeding train. Now imagine even Superman, right? Those of us who grew up watching Superman steps in front of a train or flies in front of a train. Even he is exerting a force. So we go through the same internal struggle when we stop, when we look within, when we experience the pain, when we see our part in it, or how we have contributed to this experience, even though we didn't want to, right? This is a period of emotional unease, as a period of agitation. Freud would call it tension. We have to develop the ability to stay in our bodies and observe it from a non-judgmental sphere until that train of the past slows down. That means that the commitment that I have has to be greater than my wound, because it's just quantum mechanics, basically. A thought in motion will stay in motion until acted upon a thought of greater intensity or frequency. And love is the frequency, the only frequency that can really do away with fear. Now, I think my job as a spiritual teacher, my job as a mental scientist, if you will, I've been called many, many things throughout the course of my career. Call me whatever you want, see me whatever way you need. Coach, I don't care. Whatever it is that suits you. I think someone who feels like a teacher and who feels like this is a calling to teach, we teach what we learn. We teach what has helped us. Me, it's always been the holistic viewpoint, the psychological, but the philosophical as well as the spiritual way, respecting my logical as well as my emotional mind, not just understanding, sitting in my emotions and then justifying my emotions. No, from a higher perspective, understanding my emotions. That's always worked for me, and that's what I try to teach people. And so when we are teachers, we ourselves have to do what it is that we wish to teach. What I've learned to do in my own mind is I create tools that help me do exactly what I just said. How do I get to a state of love? And one of the ways that we can get to a state of love, knowing that it casts out all fear, is non-resistance. We learned that in the 12-week breakthrough coaching program, the 1, 2, 3 process. From a very objective, as high as you can go, cosmic perspective, what can I control? What do I realistically and fairly have a right to control? And what do I realistically and fairly do not have a right to control? Do I have the right to control someone's bias against me? No. This is their life experience. And from the cosmic perspective, I have nothing to worry about because that person is generating their own quantum entanglement and drawing to them experiences that mirror their ignorance or their bias. So I really have nothing to worry about. And so when I take that perspective, I step out of the ego, I use the 1, 2, 3 process, and I say, wow, I really have nothing to worry about. When it comes to us and like physical pain and going through some loss or grief, getting older even, and having some fear, what I've learned to do is use tools like non-resistance, right? Accepting what is. And whatever it is that I have to face, I'm going to face it with grace. I'm not going to be the ornery pain in the ass in the nursing home if that's where I end up. I'm not going to be that one. When my mother was in the nursing home, poor thing, going through what she was going through, you could see the people in the nursing home. One man I'll never forget, they rolled him off the elevator and he was spitting at people. He was angry, but I don't blame him from being angry. This poor man probably worked his whole life, or I'm making up a story, but think about it. How could he be happy? He's lost his physical vigor. He's not a young, strong man anymore. He's got no choices in this nursing home. They're telling him what to eat, when to eat. They're pushing him into the hallway. I mean, he's in a diaper. Of course he's ornery. Of course he's ornery. But in this situation, it just seems like he stayed on that path, that momentum, and momentum picked up for far too long, and the scale tipped. So now, could he get back to a state of non-resistance? Sure, but he'd have to want to. And then he'd have to ask. He'd have to be humble enough to ask, please, I don't want to live this way anymore. I want to live with non-resistance. I want to live with non-resistance. I want to be full of grace. I want to be full of grace before I die, right? Because I think the state that we're in when we die affects our transition, just my opinion. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. I'm gonna read what I wrote just quickly, and then I'm gonna get to your questions. The 12-week breakthrough coaching program teaches the integral way of life. It's holistic, respecting body, mind, and spirit, which is the way of ancient teachings. Over the years, we've separated, right? Where it's like, the body is separate from the mind. Or no, it's not. No, it's not. Or I think, therefore I am. No, I am, therefore I think. So there's been this separation. Descartes created this separation in us, and now we have all of these separate fields of study where I have American Indian ancestors, and if you brought a sick child to the medicine woman or the grandmother of the group, she would look at the parents and say, what have you done? This represents the integral part, the interconnectedness of a child with her family or his family, and how the state of the parents affect the child, and the child is absorbing their parents' energy. This program, in my opinion, teaches the holistic way, where we're respecting body, mind, and spirit. The information is broad rather than focusing just on the intellectual side of trauma, focusing on CPTSD or focusing on who hurt me. It's like, yes, all of this is true. And these are effects. In this program, we dive into neurology, psychology, generational trauma, codependency in relationships, and we even address the energetic nature of individuals and our interconnectedness with the entire universe. So that's what I think separates a little bit from other programs. Like, yeah, this is all true, but I want everybody to see the big picture. The program does not neglect the inner child or the past and just focus on the now, which are all just effects of a deeper cause. We aimed in this program to exercise not only your intellect, but your subconscious and conscious mind to expand your self-awareness, self-compassion, and also self-accountability. Because there is no growth forward without accountability. There's just none, despite our trauma. So, and that's a little bit of tough love. And that thought like kicked me in my teeth. I was like, what? Yeah. Yeah. Despite what happened to you, your ability to move forward is up to you. No one's going to judge you. That's the other thing. There's no man in the sky or woman in the sky judging me because I'm stuck. No, there just is the quantum laws, or are the quantum laws that govern time and space. A being in motion stays in motion till acted upon by a force. Now, if that being is full of negative energy, then that being will stay on that path until acted upon by a greater force. For many of us, including myself, it was the fear of death. And it wasn't so much death that I was afraid of, because I contemplate my mortality every day, which I think brings life to my life. It was the fear of leaving my children behind. So that fear trumped the fear of divorce. That fear trumped the fear. So it was a greater force than the force that was running my life and keeping me on this freaking train, right? This sick loop of dysfunction and codependency and waking up every day the same way, frustrated. So it was the magnitude of the conscious fear tied to death, not death, but what does that mean for these little beings that I created, that I brought into this world? When I was unaware, I was unaware. That was like a needle to my eye. And that now all of a sudden, I was not focused on gaining my ex-husband's approval or worried about losing my parents' approval. I developed this internal reward system where it was like, it's up to me now. And that forced my neurology to change, although I didn't have all the neural pathways I needed for what am I going to do next. At least it switched the train track in my mind. So the program became a bridge of communication between your higher self, your personality 3D self, which is the consequences of trauma, and all the aggregates that make up the mind. It became a bridge of communication to your inner child and even divine intelligence. So my aim was to accept where you were, meet you right where you were, but also slowly over time introduce you to this idea that you are so much more than this trauma. You are so much more than your reactions to trauma. You're so much more to the habitual beliefs associated with trauma. You're so much more. You're one with everything. The masterclass was my attempt to take you to another bridge. Like, okay, how can I tune into my emotions in terms of energy? Can I really create something that I want? And I wanted to prove to people that if you stayed on this path, you could. Now, Soul School, for those of you who have taken the 12-week class and the masterclass, Soul School is another bridge, a bridge between your inner emotional self and the quantum field in terms of divine intelligence, your oneness and your interconnectedness. It's challenging because it's the type of course that's going to, I would say, challenge any leftover resistance you have to letting go and flowing with the divine. It's not for everybody. I'm writing the course and I'm like, oh shit, this is hard. This ain't easy. This isn't easy. But I know it's the way. I know it's the way. So the 12-week class also incorporated, like I said earlier, philosophy, science, psychology, spiritual teachings into one whole, which mirrors human reality in the 3D. It aimed to solve the problems of life that all humans face, primarily focusing on our complicated need to survive, which also triggers the fear of abandonment, which can arrest us at the subconscious level, all outside of conscious awareness. So the 12-week class to me it encompassed all of that: philosophy, psychology, sociology, consciousness, the nature of reality, the quantum field, which to me is, I have to respect myself as this whole being. I'm not just a mind, so I can't work in just the mind, which I think a lot of, if you will, more orthodox modes of healing focus on. It can't just be energy. It can't just be my physicality. It can't just be me. I don't exist in a vacuum. I exist in a community of other people. I go to the grocery store, I'm surrounded by other people. So I hope that's some of what you took away from the 12-week breakthrough coaching program. Hi, Jody, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can, Mama. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be with the community today. I really am.
Me too.
So Jody, do you have anything that you're going through at the moment, like some type of a challenge that you think the community would kind of benefit from? Or is there something just off the cuff? Is there something that the 12-week class helped you see that you couldn't see before?
Yeah, when I took the 12-week class, I was just getting out of a 4.5-year relationship, and I broke it off suddenly. And the 12-week class really, it bolstered me all the way through and got me to a very, very good place. And then last week, I got triggered. And
Yep.
it came absolutely out of nowhere. And I was so surprised because I really kind of thought not that I knew I hadn't healed, but I thought I was at a deeper place of healing. And when the trigger came up, it was so painful. But because of the class, I could observe it. I couldn't really change it, but I could observe it. And I could see and feel the fear in my body, the anxiety in my body. I could feel the cortisol just pumping through my body. I couldn't sleep. I would put on your meditations to help me go back to sleep. One night I had to do it 3 different times. But the meditations, the words in the meditations were so powerful that it could bring me back to center and get me to a place where I could relax and fall asleep. And so what came of it for me was that trigger was almost like a gift for me to go to a deeper place of grieving and to a deeper place of healing coming from that grieving. So now I'm seeing that pain in me, if I can move through it and not resist it and not judge it and not feel bad about it and see it as my wounded little girl who I had to talk to and say, I got you, girl. We're okay. We're good. You're good. I'm going to take care of you. It's very, very powerful. And I know that this is now a journey that I'll be on for the rest of my life. And I love working with you and I love this community. I think the work you do, Lisa, is beyond amazing, because you've taken that piece of spirituality that was missing, dealing with trauma. And I've been on a spiritual path since I was 36. I am now 73. And that piece was missing. I didn't really understand the trauma.
Yeah.
Now I do. And
Yeah.
I can be more compassionate with myself. And it's a gift. I mean, it's a really tremendous gift in my life. So thank you.
Yeah. So, the trigger, right? It's like everything's perception, because perception will define our reality. Would you agree or not agree?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so then it's like, okay, can I get objective about my perception? Oof, that's a huge quantum leap. Can I become objective about my perception? So,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And one of the words I started using was reframing.
Yeah.
Reframing what's the thoughts in my head that take me to those dark places. If I can reframe them and really think them through, and what about this perspective? Or what about that perspective? And if I can change the perspective, then I can release some of that angst that I'm feeling. And it's a practice. You just
Oh,
can't switch.
no, no. And the thing is that, right, it's like when you said I was triggered, well, that's why it's called a trigger. And it's the same reason that a gun is called a trigger, because the minute you once you cock that once you pull the trigger, the gun is out,
Right,
and it's going to travel on its course in the quantum field until it hits something or until it falls to the ground. But there's a course that it has to follow, and it's the same thing with an emotional flashback or a trigger, and that's tied to neurology.
right,
So when I'm triggered, then what it means is that there's still some aspect of consciousness or subconscious relating or association to an event that just took place. And my old codependency is going to want us to soothe ourselves with an immediate something that it satisfies or gratifies us in the immediate that keeps us trapped on that cycle. It's like
right.
a drug. And so someone like you who was triggered, yes, it took you 3 days, but how long did it used to take you to recover?
Oh, a lot longer than that. I
Right.
almost I almost lived in that state. I mean, I'd get triggered, but I lived in a place of fear all the
Right.
time.
That's
Yeah.
right. Dread every day. Dread.
Yeah. Yeah.
What what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen when he says this or she says that or he doesn't say this or she doesn't say that, right? This constant dread. So it is what we carry as adult children. Whether
Right.
we whether we're conscious of it or not, it's our state of being. And below the veil of consciousness, codependency, love addiction, for instance, will keep us trapped to this roller coaster, if you will, because the minute we have that tension or that agitation, we know that if we people please, we know that if we have sex, we know that if we shop, whatever it is, whatever our vice is, if we acquiesce, that tension begins to go down a little bit.
Right.
So that's not our fault that this internal reward system is dysfunctional. The internal reward system is working properly. I'm getting dopamine by calling the abusive ex, even though I don't want to. Internally, it's what I've always done. It's a pattern. So I get this dopamine hit, even though it's awry. The system has gone awry. The reward system is awry. It's keeping me strapped to this roller coaster. So, what I hear you saying, which I think is very valuable for the community to hear, is that I still got triggered, but I was triggered for far less longer than I was in the past, and I could observe it this time.
Absolutely.
That's healing.
Yes.
That's healing. So our job then is to develop the wherewithal to withstand the pain points or the points of agitation. This is going to be uncomfortable. Now, if I can stick with it like you did for the 3 days, what's happening neurologically, I am not rewiring my brain for the old dopamine hit, which is to call him
Right.
or
Which is
whatever.
really wanted to do. I really wanted to do that, and I didn't.
Well, see, this is you taming your inner lion,
Right.
right? It's like me as a mom. My son has some financial issues. I want to go in there. The part of me wants to go in there and fix it, but I'm taming my inner codependent mother and saying, no, if you
Right.
fix it, he'll never learn how to fix it.
Correct.
So I'm taming that inner lion. I'm taming that fixer, that rescuer, which really is just a manifestation of I wish someone had rescued me when I was a child.
Yes. Yes. And to feel like, this is the first time I've been in touch with my inner child. I've heard about inner child work all my life, but
Mhm.
I never really got in touch with my inner child. And to be able to make that separation when I was laying there at night and not being able to sleep and just place my hands on my heart, that's where she lives, talk to her and comfort her and feel a definitive separation between her and my higher self is pretty powerful and something I've never experienced before. And that was magical.
Ooh, I got goosebumps. So what we're talking about in that space, Jody, is this idea that in that sense of separation is powerful in that it creates the space between me and my thoughts and my reactivity. I'm off the roller coaster. I'm observing the roller coaster.
Right.
I'm no longer the inner child acting out this wound that my father created or my mother created. I'm no longer in her role. I'm no longer the adult child, the child in the adult body.
Right.
I am the observer of the inner child. So now I have space. And the only way to merge with my inner child is to A, not have the space, then B, develop the space, and then C, integrate.
Right.
We miss that in a lot of teachings. Yeah. So I was one with everything. I came supposed to be one with everything. My mother, whatever. Abandonment happens many different ways. Death, divorce, mental illness, incarceration, adoption. That happens. Whatever. Right? It happens. So now I'm separate. So I'm separate from the divine, the female divine that I'm supposed to bond with. Now I feel separate. Now I'm separate from the divine self. I'm separate from my own inner child. And I spend 73 years separate from my authentic self. Codependency is often defined as a loss of selfhood. It's saying the same thing. I'm separate from myself. But in the 3D experience, in the density of my ego consciousness, I am acting out this trauma, therefore a part of it, creating and recreating the past, and I'm completely unaware of it. So now I have to now I have to use this idea of separation consciousness so that I can get perspective and distance and say, oh, that's what happened to me. Yes. And now with this separation of consciousness, that's why I say it's not you, it's your programming. It's a tagline that I created to get people to stop. It's not me, it's my programming. Exactly. That's where the inception of healthy separation can occur, where I can now distance myself from my trauma and distance myself from my programming. And in that space, now I can tinker with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's sort of like that's why you bring your car to the mechanic and you don't ask your fan belt to fix itself. You bring it to the mechanic opens the hood, looks inside, there's perspective, there's distance, there's space, there's separation, and now the mechanic can tinker with the fan belt. It's the same thing. We need this separation of consciousness so that we can understand ourselves as separate from our trauma, as separate from the effects, as separate from our habitual thoughts.
Right.
So that we can do the divine sacred work necessary to heal.
Yes. And thank you for giving the tools to do that.
Yeah, well, thank you for wanting them, because I think this type of recovery work is a calling. I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody who doesn't have a calling to heal. Somebody who sticks with healing at this level, someone like yourself who has been trying to figure this out or whatever, your own way, you have a calling to heal. It doesn't go away, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to be triggered, but these are opportunities to push past another pain point and get to the other side.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you there, Miss Jody.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. And thank the community for all the support.
That's lovely. Thank you, dear one. Bye.
Bye.
So talk to me about your experience within the program and, anything that comes up for you that you think that could help, just spark curiosity in the community, whatever, like what's going on with you?
Well, I kind of wanted to, Jody kind of sparked something when she talked about observing her feelings. And you mentioned the word dread. And honestly, I can say probably my entire life, I have lived with this vague, and this is just how I define it, a vague sense of dread. I used to get up in the morning and it wasn't like I was having a panic attack or a meltdown or anything, but I just had a tightness in my chest, a pit in my stomach, just a vague sense of dread, kind of almost waiting for the other shoe to drop, but I didn't know what that shoe was, you know. And so that was every day. Since I've been doing this work for the past couple of years, I've taken the breakthrough class a couple of times. I've taken the master class and done, the breakthrough warrior site, done, all of these things. And now I can say that consistency and being conscious of what I'm doing, that those 7 days a week of dread, vague sense of dread, is down to 1, maybe 2 days a week. And like Jody said, even those 2 days a week, I can consciously catch myself now. And so for me, the most important things for me was, learning from the classes that I have to be conscious and I have to be consistent, and recognizing that it is negative programming. And so what do you do when there's a negative program? You make conscious choices to do the opposite, kind of.
Yep.
So I consciously meditate on, whatever it's Insight Timer or YouTube or any of the classes on Kajabi, whatever. And Lisa, I honestly think to myself, when I put those headphones on to meditate, I feel like your words are like medicine. And I consciously think of that. When I put those headphones on, I'll think to myself, it's time to take my medicine. That sort of mentally prepares me, and physically, but that sort of mentally puts me in a different space to receive those words. So yeah, that kind of, just that thought of, okay, it's time to take my medicine, and then I sort of release. And of course I listen to the live streams, because you save those from time to time and so on. And so I listen to the live streams, I do the meditations. I consciously, when something drops into my head, a thought drops in, I try to catch a negative thought. I try to catch it as soon as I think it. And I think, okay, I need to do something to break that, distract myself mentally. And that could be, go outside and fill my bird feeders and bird baths, because I love to watch my birds. It could be I go outside and play ball with the dogs, or take a long walk in the country. There's an app that I downloaded called Seek, SEEK, which identifies, different things in nature that are specific to your location. So, I'll be taking my walk and I'll think, oh, what kind of wildflower is that? So I'll go to my Seek app and it'll identify what kind of wildflower or insect or whatever. And that really also has been healing, because it's sort of like a walking meditation. And I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was a kid. So for me, this app and these long walks in nature is kind of like I'm discovering something new. It's that kind of that archaeology recovery, like discovery process.
Yep.
I'll take the dog swimming, which makes me smile. I'll watch a video or TV show that makes me smile. I'll call a friend or read a book or play a video game or whatever. And sometimes I'll turn on the sounds of a babbling brook while I read. Or like in the winter, I like those, and since I don't have a fireplace, I turn on the fireplace video, complete with the popping and crackling sounds of the fireplace, because I enjoy that ambiance and it's soothing to my mind. I've also started setting small goals for each day. So from the Breakthrough Warrior membership site, the strategy steps section teaches that, writing down daily objectives teaches us how to wire our brain in such a way that allows us for us to seek growth and expansion of self. So I literally write down, brush my teeth empty the dishwasher. And those simple goals are intermixed with more involved goals like take a long walk, do laundry, go to the grocery store. And because I live alone, sometimes I force myself literally to go to Walgreens or Dollar General, any store, so that I can be around other people and dialogue with the cashier, to distract my brain and also remind myself that I am part of the larger world.
Nice.
So one of the bigger goals this week for myself is I want to start a rough draft of potential Christmas gifts for each person. And I know this seems like a daunting task, but in my mind, it's like, okay, if I can get a rough draft or at least make a little attempt at, organizing my thoughts. And, everybody, or I shouldn't say everybody, but, the holidays is a big stress point for most people. So
Yep.
I'm trying to kind of get ahead of that, that curve, so to speak. And so when I start to go down a rabbit hole of bad thoughts or something drops into my head that's not productive, I remind myself not to get stuck in the undesired, because you've taught that is focusing on lack. So I get discouraged. I'm 2 years into this, so I don't have all the answers, but it's conscious now. It's a conscious effort. So when I get discouraged, I remind myself that it's work to manage my mind. But the more conscious choices I make, the more progress I'll see and the more victories I'll have to celebrate.
That's right.
And so I guess I would like to say, that why do I keep doing these things? Why do I keep taking my meditation medicine with Lisa or whatever? It's because it works. And I have been on a journey for probably, like Jody mentioned, I've been on a journey for years, looking for how to fix things, how to change, those thoughts. And I honestly believe that I found it. I keep doing this work with you because it works. And so it works for me. And as Jody, and I guess lastly, I would say that, when Jody was talking, it I don't want to say triggered, but it got me to thinking that I felt this thought come into my head that after this live stream today, I thought, oh, I'm going to send a text message to this old friend of mine that I used to be codependent with and say, oh, hey, I had this great live stream experience today, blah, blah. And then I stopped and I thought to myself, why would I do that? She's not going to understand. And it was that thought of me, that codependent thought of recognizing that I was going to send her a text message hoping she'd send me something back and say, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. So it's that looking for that validation. But now I can look at those things day to day. And just when they come up, like that's just an organic example of just what happened 10 minutes ago.
Right.
And I can look at those things and think, okay, yeah, why would I do that? I'm looking for her validation. Nope, I'm not going to do that. So anyway.
So two things that I just want to suggest. So don't forget, right? I don't like using that word, but remember that when we sense lack, we have to embrace it. So when I embrace it, wow, I'm sensing lack, right? I'm sensing lack is different than I am lacking, right? Because we are already whole. Our true self is already whole. What we're navigating is our point of awareness, our point of perception, and point of consciousness at any given time and space. So now it's like when I notice lack, it's like, wow, I'm noticing lack. I'm noticing jealousy. I'm noticing criticism for someone else, or I'm noticing, use your example, I'm noticing that I felt the impulse to reach out to a friend because I'm excited about this live stream, which is beautiful, which is not of lack. That's not of lack. That's like, oh, I'm excited to share, right? It's all about community, right? So that's not of lack, Sue. Now, if you could, and I'm not telling you what to do, but if you could Go, because people always say, how do I know? How do I trust this person? You don't have to ever trust anybody else but yourself again. So if I have the impulse to text someone, if I can notice, wow, I might have been texting that person out of habit to want to receive something in return, but I wonder if I could still text this person and expect nothing in return. And whether this person texts me back or not, I'm not in lack because I was in the flow of that beautiful impulse, that beautiful idea of sharing, which is growth, which is interconnectedness, just like you going to a store and saying, I'm a part of this community, which I think is so brilliant, Sue, and I applaud you, especially for someone who lives alone. That is so huge to get out about in the comfort zone because adult children tend to walk planet Earth very defensively. Makes sense, right? Because we have been wounded and our attempts to connect have been met with criticism or abandonment or rejection, right? So it makes sense that a lot of adult children, they don't even realize it, but they walk planet Earth with this feeling of dread, waiting for the next shoe to drop. No different than being in the army and when is the next bomb going to hit or when is the next bullet going to fly, right? Same type of internal battle that's happening, although we're not aware of it. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And it's and it's the nuance of what you said
Correct.
about, yeah, it's the nuance of, but it goes back to that black and white thinking that I have and a lot of us have. So, I can recognize that, okay, I wanted to share, like you said, this excitement, this good feeling that I have about this live stream and what I'm learning, and oh, this is a great day, and guess what I did, all of that. But it's a nuance to get to that point where you can share something and not expect something in return. And I guess I would say, as far as that lack, I mean, I probably used the word lack in the wrong context, but
Okay.
where I was going with that was the there, in the law of attraction, manifestation and stuff. I know you talk about don't get stuck in your undesire
Correct.
state of undesire, and that is a lack state, and that's, I guess, what I was saying. But yeah, it's I guess it boils down to what we're talking about is that awareness piece, that conscientious piece, that observing piece. Like I can think, oh, I want to share this, then I think, well, why do I want to share this? Do I want her to, so that's that internal dialogue, which is a place that I was not at a year ago.
Right.
I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Correct.
So yeah, it's it makes total sense. And I appreciate you, I appreciate you picking up on that example and giving me even more to think about, because yeah, to me it was black and white. I want to share this, but I don't want to feel codependent on her response. Now I can think, oh, I can share this and not expect anything.
Correct.
And then therefore not be hurt if I don't get what I want to get.
Oh, I want to jump in your lap and kiss you on your forehead. Yes. So and again, that's the benefit of, coaching. That's the benefit of teaching. That's the benefit of learning. That's the benefit of coming together as a community and sharing that. I'm sure lots of people on the call are going to benefit from that. Like, oh, okay. I recognize that in the past, I might have, like me, I used to clean the house like a fiend before my ex-husband came home and he'd walk in, what's for dinner? I was like, oh, I worked so hard and you didn't notice that the kids are all clean and their homework's done. Right? The little girl in me begging, can you see me? Can you see me? Right? And then the codependent thing, which is now my ego mixed in with that, where now I'm going to do all these amazing things and you're going to see me. Right? So, that was my limited thought process as I was growing up. And so it doesn't expand just because I'm a grown ass woman with 3 kids. I'm stuck on that wheel. And so that's the benefit of having a growth mindset and really doing deep dives. And also, I personally feel that a teacher can only take you as far as they've gone, right? So I have to go into those places within myself if I'm going to be able to recognize it in you and say, hey, Sue, how about this piece? Because I got stuck there on the road for a little bit too. I'm not going to call this person because I know my intention is I want her validation, or too much time has passed and I hate feeling like she really doesn't give a rat's ass about me. So I'm going to reach out and see if she reaches out back, right? So I could go a step further, which is, let's call it love consciousness, right? Or oneness consciousness. I can go a step further and feel this spark of this impulse of growth and act on it and expect nothing in return. Expect nothing. It's sort of like when I wrote my book. I just wrote the book. I had no expectations. So my desire to help one person launched, right? Esther Hicks would say, a rocket of desire into the field of potential, because the quantum field is nothing but potential. Our patterns and programs are define our fate, which is only a probability, right? It's just a potential, but I can experience any potential if I unleash myself. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes
So,
total sense. And yeah, it makes total sense. And it just shows how many layers there are to all of this.
right.
And we hear all the time about taking a deep dive or trusting yourself, or it's just, but when it actually kind of starts to click, it's wow.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no,
You
it's
you could do all the things you used to do as a codependent with a different intention and create a different outcome. So I can still make 200 cupcakes in my son's kindergarten class and not be attached to the outcome. I can still bring my best friend or one of my friends who isn't as reciprocal, if you will, in the relationship. I can still make her chicken soup because I'm a caring human being, and I know that she's under the weather, and not expect her to pat me on the back. I can still love my husband and clean the house because I like a clean house, and not do it because I want his validation. I can still send a text, like in your situation, to this person, say, I don't know what's going on with you today. I hope that you had as great as morning as I did, participated in this live stream and it just lit me up. I hope you have a great day, and expect nothing in return. So that's the difference of an ego consciousness, which is, hey, attached to the outside, expecting a particular outcome, right? Whereas love consciousness, or the healing consciousness, is I'm just going to be me regardless of the outcome. So you can be. I tell my kids this all the time. So recently, like last week, a week and a half ago, I was driving with my daughter, and she's very aggressive on the road, and I'm sitting in the back seat with the baby, and I'm saying to her, "You don't have to be this aggressive." And she's like, "Well, that person just cut me off." And I said, "And you still don't have to be that aggressive. It's a
right.
choice. Do I have a right to be angered? Of course I do. And I can still be angry and embrace it and have that inner dialogue. Lisa, listen, you got amped up, like the limbic system got activated. That's completely human and normal. You're not a ghost. You're not spirit completely. You're going to have to navigate this hardware. That's completely okay. The choice is, after I have this conversation, this inner dialogue of validating myself, then the choice is, what do I do next? And that's going to dictate my fate. So I'm trying to teach my daughter, you're upset. I understand that. That makes sense. So my point is that potential exists. The potential to get shot on the road because of road rage, that exists. The potential to just let the person drive by, that exists. All of these potential exists. So my question is, that I ask myself, and I hope rubs off on my kids, is like, what potential do you want to resonate with? Because they all exist and all of them are valid. The fact that you're pissed off or you're upset is valid. What are you going to do next? Because if you stay at that, I'm pissed off, guess what? That person who cut you off might be pissed off too. So now we've got momentum and now we have quantum entanglement. Now we have resonance. So now it's just going to, and there's no judgment because that is a potential in the field. I didn't create the field. I didn't create the laws, that govern time and space. I just try to understand them so that I could live within them and modify my life and my energy and my thoughts and my future according to where I'd like to see it go. And the only thing that makes sense to me at this stage is non-resistance, living in a state of love consciousness and carving out a new path for myself, for my children, and maybe other people who are interested that is beyond black and white thinking. That's all I can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I wanted to, as you were talking, it made me think that, my whole life I've heard, on the healing journey life anyway, I've heard and read books and, whatever, anything that says, give without expectation, right? And I always thought to myself, well, like you're saying, I'm a caring person. I do give without expectation. But in my mind, I think it was, I wasn't expecting anything physical in return, like a physical gift or a physical card or whatever. But I do think I was expecting something, and a pat on the back, something, not a physical gift, but I was expecting, even though I didn't realize it, I was expecting something in return. I was expecting atta girl, or you're so awesome, or whatever. I was expecting the validation that codependents look for, like, yes, did you see me? I don't expect a physical gift in return, but I was expecting like I was just excited and anxious anticipation of, oh, they're going to say, oh, you're so sweet, you're so kind, and that in itself is expectation.
And that's okay because it's normal, right? And it's
Right.
normal that we seek that validation. And however, when it prevents us from living in a higher frequency or more in alignment with our true self, which is love and expansive, when that unconscious expectation will keep us from experiencing what it is to give for the sake of giving, right? So when we think about the sun, what does the sun ask for in return? Nothing. What is, if you believe in a God or a creator, what does creator expect in return? Nothing. Just, this is your life experience, right? The most evolved mothers, what does she expect in return? And when I say expect, I mean a conscious mother does not limit her love. Her love is not conditional. It's absolutely unconditional. So my granddaughter could have a tantrum. It's not going to prevent me from loving her. If anything, I'm going to try to figure out why. Right. So we do, as normal human beings, we do have this unconscious need. Do you see me? Can you hear me? Unfortunately, when we're codependent or we've had really traumatic experiences, that can become really maladaptive because we often become self-sabotaging and self-destructive. We don't set boundaries because we're afraid of risking the fractured relationships that we do have. So now I'm stuck, right? I'm stuck seeking the validation of this destructive person, all outside of conscious awareness. And now I'm also afraid to expose myself and to be giving, like in a community. I'm afraid to expose myself in a community. I saw this not so much with the later 12-week classes, but with the earlier classes, and I think the moderators would agree with me. In the beginning, like let's say 2016, someone would post something and they would be upset that the group or the moderators or myself didn't answer their question right away. Right. So then it's like, there it is. Well, you offered something with an expectation, and that hinders you because now you're focused on what you're getting in return, and you're not focused on the frequency of letting go or let's just see what comes my way. Let's see what happens of this. So when we attach to an outcome, we're limiting the field of potential. When I say I have to have this job, make this amount of money, I have to be married by this time, now you're actually limiting yourself. When the field of potential is many, 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 anything, innumerable potentials. So that's why I always try to teach. It's better to learn how to live or exist in a frequency of that which is what you desire, which is ease and peace and contentment and community and feeling safe. Just live that each and every day. And then try to what you're doing, create it in your everyday. Reach out, send a text. Who cares if she doesn't matter. You are resonating with the frequency of community. You showed up today. It doesn't matter if I call on you. It doesn't matter. You showed up. You're resonating in a frequency of community. Going to the dollar store and saying, hey, to the cashier, resonating with frequency. This is the way you're building your future desired reality, by resonating with the frequency that you want to experience in the future. Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely. And I love that cupcake example that you have told, not only here, but many, other times, because that expectation, like you just said, you can still make 200 cupcakes, but the expectation of getting all kinds of gold stars and applause and a shout out and a public recognition or whatever the case was, that has changed. That, that expectation has changed. So, and like you have talked and Jody just mentioned that it's a journey for life, but it's a productive journey, I guess. I'm a goal seeker, and I'm driven to, learn things. I'm inquisitive. I'm a lifetime learner. And so I don't mind if something is hard, if I feel like it's working, or if I can see progress, or if I can feel it, and that is what we have with this community, is we have that traction feeling of making progress. And I look back with how I might have responded to something in the past, and I think, wow, I'm glad I didn't respond that way today. I know better.
Yes.
It's
so beautiful. And that's it. It's like, we have to stop judging ourselves, and we have to really applaud every small milestone. And I told someone just yesterday, I said, just move the needle 1% today. That's all you have to do, right? Just move it 1%. Right. And if you don't, that's okay too, right? It's like this idea of like, absolutely nudge the judge. There's no room in my consciousness for judging, just observing. I've had a near-death experience. I tend to gravitate towards other people's near-death experiences. And a lot of near-deathers talk about this life review. And it's like and I just had a conversation with my daughter yesterday about it, because I'm trying to help her become more self-aware and become aware of how her actions, her facial expressions, her body movements affect the people around her, because they do. We're all interconnected, right? There's such a thing as nonverbal communication. What happens in the 12-week class and the master class, and hopefully soul school as well, is like we're developing this ability to have a life review from a detached, observable place that's non-judgmental. Oh, that's what I was doing. Okay, let me try something else. Right? So the near-death experience life review is basically, from what I understand it, many near-deathers say that as they're transitioning or when they're on the other side, it's like they're watching a plasma television, and they can see almost like holographically these past experiences that they've had that have shaped them, and also have been recreated in their current life or that moment in time, like a movie clip. And from the benefit of the observer, which is what I teach in my meditations also, it's like, I'm going to teach you how to observe this life experience objectively. And in that space, minus the shame, which is through the eyes of the inner child or ego consciousness, minus shame, now I'm a computer programmer, or now I'm an architect, or now I'm a designer. And so, like, what I'm hoping that you receive is like, wow, I can review this, like you said, nuance. There's a nuance. Like, I was going to text her about this live stream, then I pulled back because, oh, is this codependent? Am I seeking something in return? Well, yeah, maybe that represents an old consciousness, but this time I can send that text out as I observe my life review over the past half hour. I can still send that text out and expect nothing in return and literally go about my day and know that my intention was one with grace and love and compassion and growth. So it doesn't matter if it comes back to me. All that matters is that I drop that into the ocean of the quantum field. That's all that matters.
It's sort of like intention, right? Like
Correct.
how you feel about that.
So
are you doing it from a place of fear or reactivity, or this is how I do things, or is the intention, like you just said, to share a joy that I'm having and wish that joy on the other person?
Or anywhere. It's just the field, because
right.
There's the ripple effect. So that's super, super important. And that's absolutely beautiful. I think what we try to do is like, and you learn this in business too. And I'm trying to teach my daughters, like, don't focus so much on the output, focus on the input, focus on the love you bring your business. Don't focus on the output, focus on the intention of the moment. When you answer that email, right? When you create that sticker, they do a lot of like, rainbow stickers. When you create that bride's design, when you're having the conversation with the bride, focus on the input, meet her where she is, try to tap into what it is that is her dream. Focus on the input, because that will align you with the creative powers that created the universe. You will be divinely inspired, and then you act on that. The output takes care of itself. So same thing. You focus on your intention of sending that text. Don't worry about the output.
Right. And I'm writing this down. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Like you're telling your daughter, focus on the customer goodwill and the
Correct.
feeling that they'll have when they have, the feeling they'll have when they receive what you're sending them.
That's right.
And focus on taking the right picture to represent
Correct.
your product,
Correct.
instead of focusing on one email out of 1,000 that you might get that says, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And
Right.
then getting mad because that, they dared to challenge you, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So it really is teaching intention, right? Teaching input, because if you can control the input, then you can control the output. The output will take care of itself because input equals output.
Right.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for showing up today, Miss Sue.
Oh, thank you. This is such a blessing, and I absolutely appreciate it. It's my medicine, Lisa.
I hear you. Well, I used to say meditation is my medicine, right?
Right.
Because it was. And in the beginning it was, oh shit, I gotta just slow down this mind. I was gaining. I could objectively say, oh no, my mind is a very crazy place. It's just thoughts just ricochet. It never stops. So I have to teach it to stop. So I used meditation, but that was just the beginning, because then it was, well, how do I, in soul school, I in one of the lessons, I think it's lesson 7, I talk about, how do I get David from this stone? How do I carve David out of the stone? Right? Like Michelangelo. And so it's like, well, I have all these thoughts, they've slowed down. Okay, so here's the clay, or here's the stone, or here's the piece of paper. How do I master it? So slowing the thoughts down is one thing, but developing the nuance is another, which is what you're learning to do.
Right. And yes, absolutely. And thank you, like I said, thank you to you and everybody, because it is, all these little tidbits that you pick up along the way, your experiences, other people's experiences, it all helps it helps all of us to, we don't all learn the same way, but by sharing, something is going to click.
Correct. Yeah. That's why I think the live streams are so powerful and the live groups are so powerful because and the moderators are so incredible. They're so compassionate. They make everybody feel seen. There is that, and studies also, research has proven that online support groups, they contribute to the healing process. I'm not making this up. It's research. Thank you for being part of the community, and thank you for contributing to the Break the Warrior membership site too. I know that's not always easy to like put yourself out there, so I appreciate you doing that. So, and thank you for today. Doing great. Thank you so much for being here.
Since I took the breakthrough class, I had been through counseling and therapy for years. And this really has helped me in so many ways, especially forgiving myself, coming from a divorce with a narcissistic husband and seeing some traits my kids were picking up from my ex, and also blaming myself for, where my children were at. So I really have learned to calm my mind through meditation and through yoga. And if I miss those without the week, it kind of sets me off and I don't have to get back into my routine. So I'm finding, once again, very similar to what we spoke before, is consistency is really the key to keeping your mind in a good place, so that I'm aware of what I'm doing and what I'm saying, and just to slow down and to give my pause to everybody, and to really, like I said, forgive myself, but also be accountable in a kind way, so that I'm not too harsh on myself, but to really step back and be aware of what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and just, it's more peaceful, and in that space, I'm giving less judgment to people and less judgment to myself.
I love that.
Yeah, so I'm finding everything to be, there are bumps in the road, and I have been getting comments about how I seem calmer or something's different, and it's what I needed. It was more of an introspection from where I was coming from, rather than a reactive way that I have been dealing with things for so long. And it really has helped me quite a bit, and I'm looking forward to going back and rereading everything, and then going back over all the information, because there's a lot of information. And like you had mentioned before, there's so many ways to look at it, and for each situation, there could be different outcomes for how you handle everything. So I'm just finding all the information, it really is feeding my brain. It's really helping me learn and to see things differently. And I just really have benefited tremendously from the program. So I want to thank you. And, still having some issues, especially with my young adults. I'm just trying to accept them for who they are, instead of, which I always want to change the outcome or control everything. So I'm, really working on that, and boundaries with them. Those two are my big issues, really, that I have problems with, like difficult people. And I'm working on that. So that's where I am right now. So yeah.
It's just going to get better, Jackie. It's because we can come as parents, we can come from such a good place of intention to try to protect our children, to try to guide our children. But they might not, most oftentimes they don't. They don't get it, that we're coming from a place of guidance and a place of protection. What they receive is, no, you're trying to control me. And so now, that throws us for a loop, because from what they're saying, they're rejecting us, right, which hurts. And they're misunderstanding us, which is our wound, which oftentimes causes us to go into a spiral and just want to control the outcome even more. And so I really like what you're saying about how I'm learning to let them go. I'm learning to be kinder and have more compassion for myself. I'm focusing on myself, which means that I'm probably focusing on what I can't control less, right? Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. So I love what you're saying. And I love that the class has allowed you to be more introspective. Was there anything about the class that surprised you?
Oh, I think what was the information and the knowledge, and in the depth of how, the science behind everything. I mean, I love that. I love learning new things. So to me, I was thrilled with that part of it all. I just found that to be so helpful to all this, everything that kind of backed up where you were coming from. And it was information and knowledge that really, puts another layer onto healing and recovery. And that's what I like. I mean, I love learning new things. And I just found it, it was a class, it was education, which, is so helpful. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you're a nurse, so
Mm,
right, you're a nurse.
yeah.
So with your background in nursing, anatomy, physiology,
Yeah. It's great.
I'm sure that it's like, wow, like,
Mm,
okay, I can apply this to spirituality. I can apply it to personality. I
yes.
can apply it to relationships, all of it.
Mm,
And and that's what I was saying earlier. It's like the class is integral, it's holistic. It builds bridges between um, like I imagine that I have this little self inside of me or the self inside of me, but I need all these bridges to the part of me, the psychological self and the neurological self and the chemical self and the spiritual self, relationship self, the wounded self. I need all these bridges to be able to communicate with all of these various levels of myself so that I could have a holistic experience of myself and essentially experience integration, but also recognize that consciousness is outside of the mind,
mhm,
right? So the mind I love the Buddhist teaching of the aggregates. Like there are so many different things that make up the mind,
mhm,
and we're not the mind. But
mhm,
when we're below the veil of consciousness, we're operating from the mind and don't know it. And then we have the neurology and the neural circuits and what we've associated with pain versus pleasure. And so we're bombarded with all of these experiences and we're operating in the 3D world and oftentimes acting out the patterns of our parents and we don't
mhm.
even know it. And
Right.
so learning that, wait a minute, that is all valid and that is all true. And then adding the layer of the subconscious mind into it, because the subconscious mind is a million times more powerful than the conscious mind.
Mhm,
So then I have to develop this consciousness piece, which is outside of the mind. And I think that what I like what you're saying, what I think what you're speaking to is, Lisa, I have an awareness outside of my mind now,
mhm.
outside of my old patterns that I never had before. And I like working in that space.
Yes. Exactly.
That's awesome. That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Mhm,
And it's also very validating when someone outside of us says, "Oh, what's different about you?"
mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
I've
what's different about
heard
you?
that more than once lately. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, see, to me, that's confirmation that you're controlling the input much better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So before our awakening, the input is just what was inputted. In other words, like whatever was inputted into me as a child, right? I'm chewing on that for 50 years.
Right.
That's the input. Okay, and then now, okay, that look at my output. Look at my relationship with my kids or my husband or whatever, my health. In my case, all of those things I was guilty of. And then
Mhm.
when it hit me, oh my God, input equals output. I got to control this input.
Right.
I was just coaching my stepdaughter, almost every day, a little bit, because she's so interested in this work. So it's interesting. I have 6 children between my 3 biological and Anthony's 3 children. And I've got one that's really interested in this stuff and it ain't mine, so it's so interesting. But I don't care, it's okay. Like I said, what I said to Sue, it doesn't matter. I'm going to throw it out there into this quantum field of all these children, and whoever picks it up, picks it up. She just happens to be the one that's like, what did you say? Can you say that again? Okay, I'll say it again.
Yeah.
And teach her, like, try not to get caught up on the Ferris wheel that's going,
Mhm,
right? Because that's neurology. It's
mhm,
going. It could be no other way. It's going to work itself out. But if
mhm,
you can commit, and there's motivation, I think, is overrated. Commitment is where it's at,
mhm,
right? It's like if I'm committed to something, there's no such thing as trying. I'm going to do it.
mhm,
I'm going to do it. So once I'm committed to the consciousness path and I understand and I respect my neurology, that my brain is literally wired together. There are these synapses that have been wired together, and that's not my brain's fault. It was innocent. But if I stay out here in consciousness and I control the input day in and day out and I practice, then by default, especially at rest, My brain marks this neural pathway with a marker, protein marker, and at rest wipes it away for codependency,
Mhm.
wipes it away for the fear of abandonment, wipes it away the need to control an outcome, wipes it away. And in the process, makes a pathway for a new train of thought, which is train. Think about a train, it mirrors a neural pathway.
Mhm.
So what you're doing is speaking to, I'm creating new neural pathways. Yes. And in time, that will be your new set point. But however, the default mechanism is real because the patterns in life are run, or I should say, reality is run through patterns, right? That's why an apple tree doesn't become a banana tree. We'd have complete freaking chaos. If flamingos wanted to mate with pigs,
Mhm.
nothing would make sense. Right? So we have to understand that there's the natural order. What is taking chaos and creating order out of it is patterns and programs. But if you don't like your pattern and program, you as a human being, the supreme representation of DNA and consciousness as a human being, you have the ability to change it. I just want to teach you how to do that.
Right. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Keep going, girl.
All right.
That concludes our live stream for today. I hope that you guys have benefited from hearing from Jackie, Jody, and Sue. I hope that you continue on this path. I just want to say thank you so much for being a member of the Breakthrough Warrior community. Masterclass launches November 9th if anybody's interested. If you've taken the class already, you're entitled to 50% off. If you've taken the on-demand class, you're also entitled to a discounted offer. And again, this is just my idea, my concept of a healing community is giving people the opportunity to participate consistently over time, because that is what's going to shift your neurology, and that's what's going to shift your consciousness and be able to help you succeed for the long haul. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to do this again.